I need to tell you something I have never shared publicly before. Not in a shareholder meeting, not in an interview, not on a stage in front of thousands of people shouting my name. This is something I learned the hard way after 3 marriages. After children spread across relationships I could not keep together. After sitting alone in rooms worth hundreds of millions of dollars, feeling like the loneliest man alive. I finally understood the difference between wanting connection and truly choosing it. And if you are watching this right now, something inside you already feels what I am about to say. You have experienced it. That empty feeling of being surrounded by people and still somehow unseen. That tiredness from keeping every option open, every door slightly open, every conversation active just in case. That soft voice at 2 a.m. asking, "Is any of this real?" I know that voice. I have heard it louder than most people ever will. So let me go back to the start. When I was young, truly young, before the companies, before the money, before my face appeared on magazine covers, I had a simple belief about love. I thought it was meant to feel like momentum, like a rocket lifting off the launch pad. Powerful, loud, impossible to ignore, burning everything around it just by existing. And for some time, that is exactly what it felt like. I met Justine at university. She was different from anyone I had ever met. Intelligent, creative, completely unimpressed by the things that impressed everyone else. I had to chase her. She did not come easily, and I did not want her to. I liked that she made me earn it. I liked that she saw through the performance I had already started building around myself. Even then, we got married. We had children. We created a life together. And then, I did what I always do when something matters deeply to me. I poured everything into my work and convinced myself that success was the same thing as love. That building something that could change the world was a kind of devotion. That if I could just earn enough, achieve enough, prove enough, the people I loved would feel it. But that is not how love works. Justine felt it. Not the achievement, but the absence. The growing distance between who I was when we were alone and who I became the moment a problem needed solving or a company needed saving. She wrote about it later, and reading it hurt in a way no business failure ever has. She described me as treating her like an employee, not because I wanted to, but because I had one mode, and that mode was execution, focus, forward movement. I was running at full speed toward the future and leaving the present behind in pieces. We divorced in 2008, and I will not pretend I handled it well because I did not. Within weeks, I had met someone new, Tula, beautiful, kind, endlessly patient in ways I did not deserve. We married, then divorced, then married again, then divorced again. I know how that appears. I know exactly how that appears. But here is what was happening inside all of that confusion. I was a man who desperately needed connection and had no idea how to slow down long enough to truly receive it. I kept choosing commitment, marriage again and again. That part of me was never the issue. I believed in choosing someone. I believed in the public declaration, the legal weight of saying this person in front of everyone. I just had not yet learned what that choice actually required after you made it. Let me tell you about the moment that shifted everything for me. It was not dramatic. There was no big conversation, no lightning strike of clarity. It was quieter than that. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays always felt like the inside of a machine. Every hour scheduled, every meeting back to back, everything efficient, everything intentional, everything optimized to perfection. I was sitting in a room that cost more than most people will earn in their lifetime, surrounded by people whose job was to predict my needs before I even felt them. And I felt nothing, not emptiness exactly, worse than emptiness, a kind of static, the sense of a signal that should be there but was not coming through. I tried to remember the last real conversation I had. Not a meeting, not a strategy session, not a negotiation. A real conversation where someone knew something true about me that was not already public. Where someone looked at me and did not see the net worth, the headlines, or the mission. Just me, the person underneath all of it. I could not remember when that had last happened, and I realized, sitting there in that expensive room full of capable people, that I had done to my personal life exactly what I always warned against in business. I had optimized for width instead of depth. I had spread my attention across 100 surfaces and touched nothing deeply. I had kept every door open in the name of flexibility and walked fully through none of them. I had confused options with abundance. They are not the same. Here is what no one tells you about having options. And I have had more options than most people can imagine. Not only in business, not only in obvious ways, but in every part of life, including the personal ones. Options feel like power. They feel like freedom. They feel like intelligence. Like you are too smart to put everything into one basket, too advanced to commit before you explore every path. But options are actually attacks. Every door you leave open costs you something, not money, something more valuable, presence. The ability to be fully here with this person in this moment without part of your mind scanning what else might be available. Every backup plan you keep takes energy away from the thing you claim you are building. Every just-in-case connection you keep alive slowly drains the person in front of you who can feel it. And they always feel it. They feel that they do not have all of you. I have been on both sides of this. I have been the person who held something back and called it wisdom. And I have been the person who gave everything and felt the other person protecting themselves. Neither feels like love. Both feel like negotiation. And I spent years negotiating when I should have been building. Research actually supports this. And I find it interesting that science confirms what the heart already knows. Studies on what psychologists call the paradox of choice consistently show that more options do not create more satisfaction. They create more anxiety, more second guessing, more of that quiet background question. Did I choose right? Is there something better? Should I still be searching? The people who intentionally limit their options and commit to what they have report much higher satisfaction than those who keep every door open. This is not weakness. This is not settling. This is the psychological reality of what happens when you stop dividing your attention and start concentrating it. A flashlight and a laser use the same amount of energy. The flashlight lights up everything softly. The laser cuts through steel. Same energy. Completely different result. The only difference is focus. I want to speak about Grimes for a moment. Not in a tabloid way. Not about headlines or Instagram posts or the children's names that confused everyone, including, I suspect, some people at the hospital. I want to talk about what I actually felt in those early months before the public story swallowed the private truth. There was a period, short and specific and precious, when something between us felt like real contact. Not performance, not a public-facing partnership, not two people agreeing to exist beside each other's massive lives. Real recognition. The feeling of someone seeing not the version I show, but the version I am when I am not showing anything. She was genuinely strange in the most beautiful way. She did not want anything from the version of me that everyone else wanted something from. She was curious about the parts I had stopped showing people because no one asked anymore. The philosophical thoughts, the fears I do not tweet about. The particular kind of loneliness that comes from being the person everyone looks to. Because when you are the one people look to, there is no one above you to look to yourself. For a moment, I allowed someone in that deeply. And then I did what I always do. The mission called. The work expanded. The weeks turned into months where I was physically present, but emotionally operating from somewhere 30,000 feet above the actual relationship. I was there, but not truly there. Committed, but not focused. Slowly the connection faded, not because either of us stopped caring, but because I had not yet understood that connection, real, deep, lasting connection, is not something you can run on autopilot. It does not maintain itself. It requires the same intentional, daily, unglamorous attention that I give to everything else I value. I gave SpaceX that attention every single day. I gave Tesla that attention every single day. I learned through near bankruptcy, catastrophic failure, and sleeping on factory floors that the things worth building require everything you have. I had not yet applied that same understanding to the people worth loving. Here is what I understand now, what I wish I had understood at 25, at 30, at 40. Choosing someone is not an event, it is a practice. The decision is the starting point, not the finish line. When you look at someone and say, "This is who I choose," you have not completed anything. You have begun something. And that beginning asks you to recommit every single day, not in dramatic ways, not with big gestures, not with the kind of performance that looks good in photos, just presence. Steady, ordinary, undivided presence. The willingness to sit in this room with this person without constantly scanning the distance for something better, not because something better does not exist in theory. There are 7 billion people on this planet, and probability alone suggests alternatives. But because the search for better is exactly what stops you from building something real, you cannot create depth while protecting width. The two cannot live together. You have to choose. I used to believe my ability to focus was something I used only when needed, something I could switch on for work and then lower for everything else. Let my personal life run on a softer setting, keep a few plates spinning, maintain flexibility, but focus is not a tool you pick up and drop. It is part of your character. And if you are the kind of person who truly understands, at the level where it changes your actions, that concentrated energy creates far better results than scattered energy, then you have to apply that truth everywhere. including the places that make you uncomfortable. Love scares most high-achieving men more than failure ever could. Failure, I understand. I have failed publicly and dramatically. I know its texture, the exact feeling when a rocket explodes, when a stock crashes, when a product launch becomes a lesson in what not to do. Failure has structure. You examine it. You take the lessons. You change the process. You try again. Failure makes sense. But loving one person completely, closing the other doors, removing the backup plans, making yourself honestly vulnerable to one specific human being, that is a different kind of risk. Because you cannot engineer your way out. If it breaks, you cannot pivot. You cannot optimize afterward. You simply absorb the pain and carry it. And yet the alternative, keeping options open, hedging your bets, using the modern approach of leaving connections undefined, leaving feelings unspoken, keeping relationships in a permanent state of, let's see where this goes. That is not safety. That is just a slower path to loneliness. I know because I lived it. I lived the version where everything was possible and nothing was real, where I had more people around me than any one person could reasonably handle and still felt the very specific loneliness that sits at the center of abundance. Options are not company. Presence is company. Let me tell you what vulnerability really costs. I do not use that word the way it is often used now, as a kind of staged openness, a planned display of emotion meant to build trust. That is not vulnerability, that is branding. Real vulnerability is when you allow someone to see the thing you have protected the longest. The exact fear that lives in the part of yourself you do not even have clear words for. The version of you that exists before competence, after the armor comes off. After Amber Heard, and I will not say much because most of it has already been discussed in too many public spaces, I described feeling severe emotional pain. That description was true. And for me, it was also a huge admission. I am not someone who leads with pain. Pain is usually information. You recognize it, you adjust, you continue. But that pain was different. It was not instructional. It was not guiding me toward improvement. It was simply weight, the heaviness of having been seen, of believing that the seeing was mutual, and then realizing it was not, at least not in the way I needed it to be. That experience taught me something no business crisis ever could. Being desired is not the same as being known. I had spent years being wanted by investors, by reporters, by the public, by people who saw the work and projected meaning onto the person doing it. And I confused that desire with intimacy. I filled the space where real understanding should have lived with the noise of being wanted by many and convinced myself it was enough. It was not enough. It was never enough, not even close. Being truly known, having someone understand the structure of how you think, why you fear what you fear, what makes you quiet, what you really mean when you say you are fine, that requires something desire cannot create. It requires trust, and trust requires exclusivity, not ownership. I am not speaking about control. I am not speaking about possession. I am speaking about a simple, almost sacred agreement that says, what I show you, I show only you, the version of me that exists in this space. I am not duplicating somewhere else. That is what makes real intimacy possible. The narrowing of the lens until only one person can see clearly through it. You cannot be deeply known by many people at the same time. You can be liked by many, admired by many, even loved in surface ways by many, but to be known, truly known, you must let someone close enough that managing your image becomes impossible. And you can only do that with one person at a time in conditions of full attention. I have been asked what I look for in a partner. The answer I usually give is a partial truth. Intelligent, curious, not intimidated by the scale of what I am building. But that is the edited answer. The one I give when I am still in performance mode, shaping real feelings into something that fits an interview. The real answer is simpler and harder to admit. I want someone who makes the noise stop, not someone who joins the noise, increases it, competes with it for my focus. Someone who, when they enter a room, turns static into silence. Someone whose presence creates clarity I cannot generate on my own. Someone who knows the difference between my real laugh and my public one, and actually cares about that difference. I want to sit in a room with someone and feel, maybe for the first time without crisis forcing it, that being here is enough. Not planning, not optimizing, not running mental calculations about tomorrow, just here, present. Real. I have felt that in short moments across my life, and I have mishandled those moments. I let work take priority, I let urgency override presence. I allowed the mission to swallow the meaning. If I am honest, and this entire conversation is something I rarely allow myself to do publicly, my deepest regret in my personal life is not the divorces. Those were failures, and I take responsibility for them. Failures teach you something. My deepest regret is the times I was physically in the room, but mentally somewhere else. The dinners where my body sat at the table while my mind was already inside the next meeting. The conversations where I nodded while running background calculations about unrelated problems. The moments someone needed me to be fully there and I gave them a fraction. You cannot recover those moments. The mission will always present another emergency. There will always be a reason the work feels more urgent than the person across from you. There will always be an explanation for why partial presence is acceptable. But the person across from you has a limited number of times they will reach for you before they stop reaching. I have learned this more than once, in different forms, with different people, through different versions of the same loss. Here is what I now understand about commitment that many people, including older versions of myself, misunderstand. Commitment is not restriction. That belief is what keeps people hesitating. It keeps people on the apps. It keeps doors slightly open. It keeps backup plans alive. It is the quiet assumption that fully committing to one person means losing some essential freedom, some piece of yourself that needs open space to survive. But that assumption is backwards. Commitment creates freedom. When I put everything into SpaceX in 2008, truly everything, the last of my personal capital, a level of financial risk that would have crushed most people, something unexpected happened. I did not feel trapped. I felt free. The question was settled. There was no version of the future where I walked away. The decision was complete. I could stop wasting energy on should I, what if, is this the right move? That mental space became available for only one question. How do I make this succeed? The same thing happens in love when you truly commit, when you stop keeping alternatives alive, when you close the other tabs, when you respectfully end the backup plans. The mental freedom is extraordinary. You stop comparing. You stop evaluating. You stop running the quiet calculation of, am I settling? Is there someone better? Should I keep looking? The noise fades. And in that quiet, you can finally hear the person in front of you. You can finally be curious about them in the way real intimacy demands. Not the curiosity of early dating, where everything feels exciting because it is new, but the deeper, intentional curiosity of choosing to continue discovering someone after novelty has faded. The curiosity that asks, who are you becoming? What are you afraid of right now? What do you need that you have not said? That is the kind of relationship that changes you, not the thrilling one, not the one with chemistry that burns everything at the start, the one where you have decided, truly decided, not just spoken the words, but reshaped your actions around that decision, and then you stay curious. Committed curiosity, that builds a life. I want to speak directly to anyone listening who is standing at the edge of a choice they keep avoiding. You know who you are. You met someone worth choosing, and you are still not fully choosing them. You are keeping one eye on the distance. You are still running comparisons in the background. You are waiting for certainty that will never come, because certainty does not come from more information. It comes from a decision. You are waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel sure, waiting for fear to disappear before moving forward. The fear does not disappear. It walks with you. That is not a flaw. That is proof the choice matters. You do not feel fear about decisions that mean nothing. Fear is the entry fee to anything real. I built rockets while afraid. I entered industries where the odds were almost absurd while fully aware of those odds. I have failed publicly, dramatically, in front of millions. And I tried again because the alternative was comfort. And comfort is often just a softer version of stopping. The same psychology applies here. Choose the person, close the other doors, not because you are certain it will succeed. You cannot be certain. No one can. Certainty about another human being is an illusion. But because you understand that depth requires removing distraction, and you are choosing depth, burn the ships, build from what remains. If you are still listening, you already understand something most people spend their lives avoiding. The most powerful thing I have ever done was not building companies, not launching rockets, not sending tweets that move markets. It was deciding to stop treating love like a portfolio to manage and start treating it like a promise to honor. That decision is not exciting. It does not deliver the rush of new possibilities. It does not carry the thrill of open options. It is quieter than that. steadier. The difference between a spark and a steady flame. The flame is what keeps you warm. The flame is what you sit beside when the day ends, when the urgency fades, when the performance is over, and you simply need to be somewhere that feels like home. I have chased that flame my entire life. I have mishandled it when I found it. I have allowed work to extinguish it more times than I want to admit, but I understand it now in a way I did not before. The mission matters. The work matters. The vision of what humanity could become if we push hard enough in the right directions matters deeply. I will not pretend otherwise, but none of it means anything in an empty room. Connection is not the soft extra. It is not optional. It is the point. It is what all the work serves. It is the reason any of it matters at all. Choose someone. Choose them fully. Close the other doors. And tomorrow morning, wake up and choose them again. That is it. That is the answer.